All right. Thanks everyone for jumping on to join us today. Just while everyone's still trickling in, we'll just give people a couple of minutes to join the call if someone's coming from a previous meeting or something like that. Those of you who are regular attendees to virtual webinars will know that I like to say that I use the microwave popcorn rule of knowing when the webinar's ready. So when the number of new joins gets to, one every second or so, then I'll kick it off. But until that point, while it's still ticking up quickly, we'll just give people time to join and get settled. All right. Lots of people coming in. Awesome to see. Well, I might get us going so that anyone who's running late will just miss the virtual introduction. We are also recording this session, so if you are just joining us and you do want to come back and see catch up on the small talk from the start of the call, you can do so after the session. So hello everyone, welcome to today's webinar with Reckless Brewery. I'm Kirsten Hunter and I'm the CEO here at Birchal. And just before I introduce you to the Reckless team, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that we are calling into you from today. So Birchal is ordinarily based on the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. Today I'm calling in on the lands of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and I pay my respects to their elders past and present. So today I am joined by Alice, Grace, and Jared from Reckless. Birchal is working with Reckless on an upcoming crowdsource funding offer. So what is crowdsource funding, or CSF, you might ask? You might know it as equity crowdfunding, and it's a form of fundraising in Australia that allows startups and small and growing businesses to raise capital from a large number of smaller or retail investors, as well as wholesale or sophisticated investors through an online platform like Birchal. So instead of seeking funding from traditional sources like banks or venture capital funds or private equity, companies can instead turn to the general public, often their customers and their communities, to raise money in exchange for becoming a shareholder in their business. So for founders and business leaders, this is a way to turn their passionate supporters into shareholders. And for investors, it's a way for us to back founders and ideas that we want to see succeed. And then when they do, or if they do, you get a chance in sharing in their success. Birchal Financial Services will be the licensed intermediary for the offer. The information and discussion on this webinar is for informational purposes only and shouldn't be considered as advice or as a recommendation to invest. Please do your own research. Always consider the offer document and the general CSF risk warning before investing. And more information on both of those things is available at our website, birchal.com. How today's session is going to run. So the team is going to take us through a presentation, giving you an overview of themselves and the business, and then we'll switch to a Q&A session. So if you look down the bottom of your Zoom screen down here, you'll see a little Q&A bubble. If you have a question during the session today or one already in your head that you want to ask, feel free to drop it in that Q&A box at any time. And then once we get through the presentation, I'll facilitate the Q&A discussion from the questions that we receive in the question box. We are recording today's session, so if you do have to jump off early, the recording will be sent around after the webinar, so you will be able to catch up then. Without further ado, Reckless team, take it away.
Cool. Hello. Thanks for coming. We appreciate it. So yeah, we just wanted to start off with a little bit about ourselves, I guess. So I'm Grace. I'm the head of brewing operations here. I started my career in nursing, actually, so a little bit different, but soon realised that wasn't quite for me. So moved overseas for a little while, explored the world, came back into a hospitality job, reconnected with an old friend who was in brewing, and just decided that I would give that a go, essentially. I was really, really lucky just to kind of fall into that job at the beginning. I started as an assistant brewer, but a week later I got promoted, which was really awesome. And I was on the brew deck brewing batches of beer, 40,000 litres and whatnot. So really honed my technical skills at this big production brewery. And then about a year later, moved over to a smaller craft brewery in the inner west in Sydney. And that's where I really learnt the craft of it, I guess, the recipes, the different hops, how different flavours, different enzymes, different yeasts all can come together to create those beautiful, delicious flavors that we know of. So yeah, that's kind of my quick intro.
Thanks, Grace. And I'll go next. So, hi, everyone. I'm Alice Wilson. I'm a director with Reckless. A little bit different to Grace and Jared, which I think is one of our core strengths of the business. We each bring our own elements and skills to the team. I'm a chartered accountant, registered with the ANZ Institute, and I've been working essentially my whole career really in one of the world's largest accounting firms. Worked my way up there, and I spent a lot of time helping big multinationals, advising them on their finances and their tax and all that kind of really good stuff. So bring with me a lot of finance knowledge, I guess, to the business. But I also have a science degree. Love the science. Love geology. That's where I met Jared. So yes, bring a lot to the team. Jared, I'll pass to you.
Yes, hi. I'm Jared. So I'm also Grace's husband. And I met both of these guys through university. I'm a scientist by nature in my background. I loved all the sciences, but what really got me was geology and geophysics. So naturally, when you get a degree in geophysics, you enter the brewing world. That's what everyone does. No, so I ended up working in research and advisory, basically giving my research to banks, miners, and financial institutions around the world. I then pivoted during that time trying to come up with research. I ended up having to become a data scientist at the same time. So I ended up taking my data science to storage and logistics and started working for agribusiness in Australia for a few years, basically redesigning their supply chains, modelling and forecasting. But in the background of all of that, Grace had become a brewer. Alice was in the financial world. Grace was having the time of her life. We were working out in the corporate world what to do next. And the decision was, do you do an MBA? Do you spend all that money, or do you spend a fraction of an MBA and start a business and learn by doing? So that's what Alice and I decided to do. We had seen Grace brewing these beers. Every time she was on the brew deck, what came out was of another level, and she understood the art, the craft, the science, and also the chemistry of it all. So we decided that if that was what Grace wanted, we were going to jump in and we we're going to work on this together. We all had such diverse backgrounds. It isn't a one-man show brewery that a lot of breweries are, but it's actually a diverse group of everyone from different backgrounds. And what we had no idea was that little conversation in 2017 has turned into what we are today, which is just breathtaking. I think that's us.
Yeah. So our mission: to build an Australian-owned beer brand that delivers exceptional, approachable beer for everyday drinkers and for everyday events. I think that really sums up, the core of what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
I think when we were trying to break down, what really makes us different and stand out from the crowd. I mean, there's quite a few independent breweries that we look to, and we're impressed by and love to work with them in this industry. But we do think we have a very unique proposition to the market and to our business as well. And we've kind of put them on the screen there in 3 bullet points. But the first one, probably no surprise, that we think it's a pretty unique fact pattern that our business is majority women founded and majority women led. Majority of our team of managers who are very experienced in what they do in our business are women, and we're super proud of that fact. I'd say it kind of happened by accident, not the founding bit, but the team bit. It just kind of happened that way. And I think that's a testament to the kind of talent that we attract in our business. It certainly brings a different viewpoint, perspective, and we really think is a differentiator in the market. We're also regional based and really proud of that fact. We're based in Bathurst in the Central West in New South Wales, and again, we think this is a really unique point of difference for Reckless. Our venue has 400 plus seats. We have a tap room, we have a restaurant. And it's going from strength to strength, and Jared would talk a little bit more about that for sure. But the locals have completely embraced us, and we've embraced them. That's for sure. And Bathurst is a growing tourism destination in the region. So there's lots of events out there, not just car racing, but there's lots of events, and we are kind of at the forefront of being part of those events whenever it happens in the region. We really truly feel like we own the heartland, and we've really built the loyalty in the base there, and that's a really key differentiator for us. The final one is really what we've built and the amount of effort we've built in the vision of scaling our business. So when we bought our equipment to set up the venue, like we had the plan to make sure we had enough capability and production capacity to meet the growth that we were trying to hit. We also know that because of Grace and our brewing team, that we've had the privilege to win a lot of medals, and we'll kind of run you through those a bit more on another slide. We've been in the Gab's Hottest 100 without spending nearly as much as other breweries on marketing plans, and we're really only selling in New South Wales and Queensland right now. 75% of our sales isn't in the Central West. It's in the major capital cities, but only in New South Wales and Queensland, really. So the ability and the breadth of the opportunity for us to grow is really there for us to take hold of. So yeah, that's the three things we've really built our business on, and will continue to build our business on.
Yeah, and so that is the origin. So we were looking for what we perceived was quite a gap in the market. We're not the first brewery on the scene, obviously, and there were lots of them popping up. They were very popular, but there was this very clear and growing gap, even in 2017, where craft beers were getting more crafts, specializing, showcasing these amazing things, but they really only applied to a niche market. Whereas the macro breweries were going for price and scale over quality. And so there was just this opening where people weren't focusing on quality but approachable beers made well, let alone independent, Australian owned, and then region as the icing on the cake. So we saw this gap there, and basically our ethos that we drove the whole decision making to open the brewery was that whatever beer style we brew, whether it's a beer to be a macro drinking like all your other big Australian brands, or it's a more crafty beer like a red IPA or a pale ale, XPA, all of that, it had to be the most approachable version of that it can be, even if we sacrifice technicality, and that the beer wasn't technically within the specification of an XPA, but it was a very drinkable XPA. That's what was lacking in the market. And so with that, 2017, we're sitting there on a balcony in Newtown, just deciding whether this is what we're going to do. And that was it. We hit go. We started on our business plan, and that was to create a really approachable, quality-driven product that resonated with everyone, not just the 25 to 39-year-old male craft beer drinker, but everyone. And everything that's happened since, we're focused on that ethos, and I think our success has come from that.
So yeah, during that kind of 3-year gap that you can see in that timeline from 2017 to 2020, there's a lot of licensing and paperwork that we had to kind of get all sorted and stuff. And that gave me the perfect opportunity to do some test batches. So I spent about 2.5-3 years coming up with our pale ale recipe. So Alice and Jared were the official beer testers at the time. But they were really, really helpful. They give me feedback like, oh, this is great, but bit more sunshine. So using their beautiful constructive criticism, we ended up going through 17 batches I had time to make during that 3-year gap, and we landed on what is now our pale ale recipe. The 16th batch was the winner, by the way. So that took us into commencing our commercial production. I was 8 months pregnant when we brewed our first batch of beer, so always, a little spanner in the works there, but that's all right. So we started off brewing, contract brewing. So we'd use other people's equipment and brew our beer. I'd go in and brew our beer on their equipment. So I've used a number of different breweries in Sydney during our early years, and with Pale Ale being our first ever brew that we created. But yeah, so we move along to our 2021, where we've got our first kind of awards halls. That was the first awards that we entered. Usually you kind of enter awards as a young brewery for feedback. You get an amazing expert panel with so much knowledge and experience giving you feedback on your beers. So we were entering just to kind of, how can we make this beer better? We had two types of beer at the time, red IPA and our XPA. And they both came away with gold medals at the Australian International Beer Awards, which was amazing. Yeah.
The biggest annual beer judging competition in the world is the Melbourne Aber Beer Festival. So breweries from all around the world submit to this, and to submit two and get 2 gold medals in the first year was surreal. And I guess everyone can see that timeline, 2020 to 2021. So we decided to start commercially brewing just as the world changed and chaos reigned supreme. So throughout that time, because we were small, because we are agile, we were able to adapt really quickly and basically tiptoe our way through, just making sure that we made the right decisions as quickly as we could so that we could navigate those turbulent times as well as we could. But as we kept going through that, 21 led into 22, we won more gold medals. We did more styles of beer that were well received by the market. And it was starting to get to the point where the world's going to come out of this at some point soon, and we need to start looking for a home. And we, as a data scientist, I was doing research on Australia, the population centres, where all the breweries were, what the style of Australia was, and trying to identify regions that worked for us. And at the same time, we happened to have moved near to Bathurst. And it was just really a lot of things happened that you just can't explain along the way. And one of them was in the middle of the Delta lockdowns. The way breweries were still able to resonate with the customer was that we'll deliver the beers to their house. Then everyone will jump on a Zoom just like this, and we'll do a virtual tasting. And we'll spend the evening going through 6 beers, getting to know 150 strangers on the screen, sharing your story. And that's how we were able to stay in front of everyone and really still be able to expand our business, even though nobody was able to go out and do anything. But it was in one of those calls that there was a little figure in the corner of the screen that was actually from Bathurst. And he goes, "Oh, you guys went over on right around the corner. Why don't you check out the big, abandoned, beautiful old building in town?" So the next day we were at the front gates of the historic Crago Mill, a 150-year-old flour mill. The day after, we were inside, blown away at a beautiful heritage-listed 400-seat venue that was empty. But by luck and chance, it had already got all the paperwork and approval for a brewery. So what would usually turn a 3 to 5 year process of red tape, council back and forth, hundreds of thousands of dollars in fees, turned into a lease signing, at which point our equipment was already being constructed, ready to go in here. So 2022 went from brewing the occasional batch at a facility in Sydney to having a very large scale venue in the heart of Bathurst, and Bathurst didn't have any breweries. So very quickly we became quite a large major tourist destination, and we've gotten the locals to really come out and support us. And we do what we can to support them as well. So we've got this lovely back and forth that we have our locals, and then a few times every year, we have a massive influx of people from all around Australia who hear, find out about Reckless, find out about our beers. Then they go home and realise that they can get it where they are in a lot of parts of Australia.
Very cool. Also, I was pregnant again when we opened the venue. Just to add another little spanner in the works. Our daughter was born 2 weeks before the venue opened. So it was really fun trying to put all of the brewing equipment together at 9 months pregnant. But anyway, luckily we've found an amazing team here, and a few of them had started by then. They were able to give us a hand. So that takes us into kind of 2023. So I've just started brewing beer here in Bathurst on our own equipment. Finally, it's our own equipment. We're getting it all teed in, getting everything working, and the ABAs come around again. So we enter, of course. We want to get that feedback once again, especially with our new equipment. Every brewing equipment is a little bit different, so just really got to like tee everything in. So again, expert judging, expert feedback is what we're looking for. And to my absolute astonishment, we walked away with the champion trophy for Best Australian Style Pale Ale, which was the most entered category that year. To put it into perspective, you know, I've worked in the brewing industry for almost 10 years prior to Reckless opening for some of the biggest brands I've brewed beers, and I've never ever won a trophy before. But it didn't stop there. Pinch me, I thought I was dreaming. We ended up heading to the Indies, which is the biggest independent beer awards award ceremony, and our stout walked away with the best stout. So that happened in the same year. Did the Sydney happen that year too? I can't remember. It's all blurring into one. The next year, we go back to the AVAs. We win again. Red IPA. Absolutely unbelievable yet again. Again, that year, Red IPA won the modern IPA section, the most entered category. So we're up against hundreds of other beers.
All around the world.
Then we go to Sydney Royal that year. We walk away with 2 trophies at Sydney Royal, one for our BX Old, one for our Baltic Porter. Come around to last year, we're back at the ABAs. Surely not. Yes, again, another trophy, this time for stout. Sydney Royal last year, another 2 trophies for Red IPA and stout. So yeah, eight trophies in the 3 years of production. As I said, you know, I've been in the industry working for some really, really big beers, big brands. I've never ever won a trophy before. It's just a real testament to, you know, I think what we're doing with our styles, and just like really that fine line between what is the technical style and what is an approachable beer, but also our brewing team. You know, we've managed to recruit some incredibly talented people out to Bathurst, moving from different states, different cities. And, you know, they really are, in my opinion, the reason why our beers are just going, you know, from strength to strength.
I mean, it's hard to top that, honestly, Grace. But when I think about the 2025 onwards and upwards points, it really is just kind of taking a second to take stock of the journey. And I was having a bit of PTSD with the setup of the brewery when you were talking about it just then in 2022. But look, I think the amount of trophies we've won, incredible, like blown away. I think it got over 100 medals as well, go alongside those champion trophies for our beers. You know, we're in over 1,000 bars and bottle shops around the country now. I think we brewed about 350,000 litres of beer in the calendar year of 2025. Compared to our first year of operation in Bathurst, we brewed 160,000 litres. So the growth and the accolades are there. And so I think this is why it felt like the right time now to seek the extra kind of equity that we need to take Reckless to that next level. So I think if I go to the next slide, please. Look, we can harp on about how many awards we've won for days and days. And I will let Grace do that in a second. But just before we do, I'll just touch upon a couple of the financial ratios. You know, this is for the calendar year 2025. But you know, the financial year 25, which is our financial year finishes in June. But this is for December year-end numbers for the 12 months of December. You can see there that the growth and the revenue is really quite quite strong. So our wholesale growth in 2025 grew 35%. Retail revenue growth grew 10%. Our total revenue for the calendar year was 3.5 million. Our revenue for the last 6 months has been almost 2 million. So if you kind of put that onto a page, the growth is really happening for us in terms of our revenues, and we'll, when you get the offer document, you'll also see the hard work we've really put into keeping our costs under control and making sure that our COGS ratios and our gross margin ratios are really under control and coming, and getting better and better as we grow and scale and get the scales economy impact as well. But none of this is possible, obviously, without the amazing product that Grace and the team is brewing.
So I won't tell you again about all of our champion trophies and whatnot, but I will, point to the medals that we've won, and just back to that amount of amazing expert feedback that we get back. So there's 6 medals there. So that's 136 bits of feedback for 136 beers that we've received for us, to get better and better and better. And I just, looking at those numbers, it's almost too many to kind of comprehend in our short little lifetime here. But yeah, I'm just so incredibly proud of our team. That really, is a bit of a pat on the back to make sure that they know that they're doing a great job. Yeah, it's awesome. Oh, look, there we are. See how happy we are? It does. That was the first trophy we ever got.
The excitement doesn't wear off.
No, it's still incredible. Can't believe it. Yeah.
Move on.
Yeah.
So one of the big things, we had this brand, Reckless Brewing. We were contract brewing before we found our venue and found our home. But as soon as we had nailed down that we were moving to Bathurst, we were becoming a regional brewery, we're a country brewery, we had to be cognizant that in Australia, in the world, Australia is no different to the rest of the world. 90% of the beer drunk around the world is a lager. 10% is everything else. And 10% is what the craft beer focuses on. But if we're moving to the country's even worse. It's pushing up towards 95% lager. So if we're going to be a regional brewery and we're going to showcase and be proud of regional, we have to focus on creating a lager. And some breweries that have done this before, they've often created a lager because they know it will sell, but then they will make fun of it. They will call it names that are derogatory to what their actual products are, which is their craft beers, their pales, their XPAs. We wanted to go the completely opposite way and go, no, we're proud of our lager. A good lager is what we want to drink. We don't always want to drink a red IPA. I love it, but I'm just as appreciative of a good lager. And so we created these 2 very distinct brands when we were opening up shop here. And we have our Reckless Brewing that showcases everything that craft beer is so good at, which is all those different flavors that are available to you now in styles from all around the world. But for our lager, what we wanted to do was make it as friendly and approachable as possible. So the flavor ethos is the same. The branding is very much made to look like a macro. We wanted people to pick it up who have never drunk craft beer or have negative connotations of craft beer and go, oh, this is good. And we knew that once they would touch that beer, that they would enjoy it and they will come back for more. So that range is very quickly expanded. BX Lager is our standard full-strength lager. BX Mid, our mid-strength lager, because mid-strength are the top 2 most popular beers in Australia, both mid-strength lagers. So we've got to make sure we cater to that. We've got our BX Lime, which is the equivalent of a cerveza with a wedge of lime. So we all know what sort of beer that should be. And all these beers, they appeal to everyone, not just the craft beer drinkers, not just the macro drinkers, but men and women. And what we've seen is phenomenal growth in our BX lager branding. And that's where we see a lot of our future growth going. And even though BX, it's named after the Army code for Bathurst, and Bathurst is very proud of it, we actually sell more BX often in Brisbane and the Gold Coast than we do in the Central West, because it's a brand that resonates way beyond Bathurst or the Central West. It's a brand that resonates with Australia and Australians. It represents true Australian-owned, independent and country beer. And that's what we've focused on with this product. And we're just seeing it go from strength to strength to strength. Obviously, there's a lot of options to grow it, but we're also really well aware that we've got to be able to fund our growth, and we can't grow too quickly. So what we've been finding over the last few years is that there are opportunities that we're saying no to because we don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves and end up in trouble having all this growth and not working out how we can sustain it. So again, that's why we are where we are here now, seeking to go to the next step. I can't remember what this.
So when we think about the opportunity, we've already touched upon what we think our differentiators are, but how do we capitalize on those in taking Reckless and continuing the growth that we've seen? And where we want to focus our energy is kind of across 4 key, I guess, areas of the business. And the first one is obviously wholesale. Always has to be a primary driver of your strategy and your growth plans. And that's where you get your scale, and that's how you're able to spread the load of all your fixed costs. As I mentioned before, we're kind of in around 1,000 stores in Australia, but really this is barely scratching the surface of what's available for us. Our sales team has been growing for over the last few years. Our first ever employee, Dan, who was in the photo you would have just seen, he was our first ever employee and he was our sales guy, and he's still with the company 5 years later, which again I think is a testament to the talent we attract, but also hopefully the opportunities that we provide our team. But we've grown our sales team now to 4 people, and we want to do that more. We really believe in the high touch sales model with our guys on the ground, boots on the ground. And so that means expanding that team further. That's where we've had our greatest success. And the opportunity is there. We've really been focusing on New South Wales and Queensland for now. But Victoria is obviously a huge market that we haven't really tapped into yet. And there's obviously other parts, not just the Eastern Seaboard, for us to kind of get our foot in the market as well. So kind of opportunity number 1. The second opportunity, it really focuses on Bathurst and our retail space. We have an amazing venue that we've really kind of fitted out and run, but on bootstraps, to be completely honest. Like Jared and Grace have done an amazing job in finding and outfitting as much as we can on the smallest budget as possible. But there is so much opportunity in that venue. It's a heritage, beautiful space. There's actually more spaces we could rent if we wanted to expand further. The car park right now could be turned into more of an outdoor venue. There's abilities for us to run festivals, events. We already do some activations with as part of the car racing weeks that are in Bathurst, but that is really an area as well that remains pretty untapped by us. It's just a matter of investment in it from our perspective to be able to do that. The next one's white label, and I think, Grace, you might touch on the white label opportunity.
Yeah, we're in a unique opportunity that we get our cans inkjet printed. So usually you have to buy 40,000 of one type of can, but because we're using this smaller company and they inkjet them, we can get as little as 16 cartons of beer of cans. So we started toying with this idea of doing these white label beers. So we're putting our award-winning beer into, your brand. So we've done it for some schools, like old boy associations. We've done it for weddings. We've done it for local businesses. And we're just starting, we're just kind of starting to expand that. And it just went bananas without any marketing or pushing or anything at all. So we haven't really been marketing it because we don't have the capacity right now to do much more. But it's an incredible growth opportunity for us, because we're selling these beers at retail prices, and we're getting that money in the bank the day that they come and pick it up. Whereas, with a wholesale kind of account, obviously it's a little bit cheaper for multiple cartons and kegs and whatever. But they often are not paying for 30 days, etc., that kind of stuff. So the white label beers, we see that as an enormous growth area for what we've currently done with no marketing.
Absolutely.
And great for our cash flow, which I love.
100%.
And finally, this all stems around branding and marketing, and our brand and where we are now is nothing short of exceptional, that we are now one of the most recognised brands when it comes to the brewing scene in Australia, but we're also one of the most recognised brands in the central west of New South Wales across the spectrum. So one thing we've always touched on, we're very tight with our money, and I think you can see from all the medals and accolades they've won, our ethos has always been never, ever, ever skimp on the quality of the beer. We will utilise our funds more efficiently elsewhere, but never at the expense of the beer, and that obviously shows. So what we've become really experts at is guerrilla marketing and advertising, getting bang for buck out of getting your exposure and branding out there. And it helps that you're in a town that gets flooded with people from all over Australia several times a year. That's immeasurable. But also having a town to ourselves means for the local area, we're able to do what almost no other brewery does, and that is go to traditional media, billboards, radio ads, local television, and that's also worked really well for us. And it allows us to basically target every cent we spend on our marketing to have a favourable return. And we keep working with that. Obviously, our scene relevancy is everything. You've got to be fun. Our branding is fun, it's genuine, it's unscripted, and people resonate with us. And obviously, we've already shown what we can do with almost no budget. What can we do with some budget? And that's one of the other parts we focus on, because all this wholesale growth, retail, white label, it all has to be wrapped up in people knowing who we are. And we've done an exceptional job on almost nothing. We're really excited at what we can do once we've got an actual budget that we can assign to getting our brand out there and being one of the most recognisable independent beers in Australia. Which I suppose brings us to what are we going to spend a successful crowdfund on? And I believe any crowdfund is exactly the same. The first one for a growing business is working capital. That working capital is limited only by what we're able to do. So being a primary producer, our costs are high, our costs are upfront, and there are a lot of ways where we can expand our production if we have access to more capital for upfront expenditure. That then brings our unit cost down dramatically. So most of what we're looking at here is simply to find, we already know which ways they are. They're to basically do larger scale production at far lower unit cost. And that's what most of the working capital will go on straight away. Then there's other investments in longer term returns. Marketing, as I've just said, none of this is possible without having a marketing budget that basically gives you access to all of Australia. And that's what we're doing. We're becoming a national brand now. So we need to make sure that our advertising isn't just for our locals here on conventional media. It's not just social media. We've got to branch out and actually do what we've done well, but do it on a larger scale. All of this comes obviously with production upgrades, expanded R&D. We'll never stop doing research and development. Beer that you drank from the macros 30 years ago is not the beer you're drinking today. Recipes evolved, consumer tastes evolved, and we have to stick with that. BX lager that we brewed 3 years ago is not the BX lager that we're brewing today. We're always experimenting, we're always doing our research, and we're always pushing forward. And so there's lots of equipment that we can get that both increases our efficiency, lowers our unit cost, but also allows us to commit more to R&D and do more studies on our beer to make sure that we are continuing to be at the forefront. And then on top of that is the added extras. What will we do if we actually get a good raise from this? Is first of all, the venue has this unique authenticity because it wasn't done with an unlimited budget. It was done with creating the most vibrant atmosphere possible. And through that, it is magical, but there's a lot of things we can do with this venue to improve the customer experience, from basic things from the presentation of the beer garden as the first new experience for somebody who's never been here for, to better heating and cooling. Bathurst is hot in summer and it's cold in winter. And then the icing on the cake is new retail opportunities. We're not going to go around tomorrow and open another brewery in another city. That doesn't make sense to our business structure. But what does make sense is to do collaborative approaches to existing venues. So that's where you'll basically take over the bar of a venue and rebrand it as Reckless Brewing, not as a facility with tanks, but with what our story and our product is. And that way you're not going and spending millions of dollars creating this again somewhere else. You're giving them who you are and giving them the vibe that is Reckless, which is a product that already appeals to everyone. So we're looking at opportunities in other regional and also outside of capital city locations where we see the potential for what we have really exploding and creating that community support again in that region. So that's basically a tiered idea of how we want to approach the results of this race.
Yeah, the only thing I'd add to that, Jared, is that we've been very patient with every opportunity that's come our way. And we've said no to a lot of opportunities that have come our way as well. I think our strength as a team is being able to debate and decide what are good opportunities and what are opportunities that's just too much risk for us or not enough upside. So, you know, that last bullet point around new hospo venues for us, it's no guarantee that that would happen, right? We'd be waiting patiently and carefully for the right opportunity before we hit go on that kind of decision.
Yep. And
Cheers.
Yeah, I think that is us, our story, who we are and what we're looking to achieve.
Awesome. Great job, team. I might just stop sharing so that we can come a little bit bigger onto everyone's screens at home. And a number of questions have been dropping in. So that's awesome. Thanks so much for sending them through. If you do have questions as we're going through this next part of the discussion as well, feel free to drop them in. I might just start with the first question that came in, which is around sustainability and carbon footprint. So just love to hear a little bit about how you guys think about incorporating sustainability principles into what you do.
No, me. I'll attack that one. We're actually in the process right now of organising solar for our venue. We're in a heritage building, so we're very limited in what we can do. Solar's always been a key focus because we are an energy intensive business. But because of our expansion and good timing, a large flat-topped warehouse right next to us came up for availability last year, and we've turned that into our new storage and logistics facility. And we have now achieved permission to put solar on the roof. So that is part of our short-term plan, is to get that going. And our brew team, there's a lot of things on a carbon footprint level that you've got to achieve a certain size before you can really start utilising it. And 350,000 litres a year just so happens to be roughly the level before you can start considering carbon capture and reuse. Obviously, we use a lot of carbon dioxide, we produce a lot of carbon dioxide. So a carbon capture and reuse makes sense. So our brew team has literally just started the conversations, both with industry, but also with, universities. We do have a university right in town here. And looking at what options there are now that we've reached that size that we can start actually using carbon capture and reuse.
Awesome. Great answer. Close to my heart. So happy that we could jump into that quickly. I might just run through. There's a couple of questions in here that all kind of relate to specific things about the offer. So questions around the company structure, the pre-money and the post-money valuation, the current share ownership position, and the dilution that would happen to the share table based on the raise amount, the cash flow numbers, what the raise amount will be. I'm not going to ask the team to answer those questions now because all of those things will be answered in detail in the offer document, which will come out next week when the offer does go live. So rather than sort of trying to go through those things now on the investor call, I'd ask you to just sit tight on that one and you'll be able to read through it when the offer document does go live. The reason for that as well is because we go through a lot of compliance processes on the Birchal side. And so we want to make sure we're providing you with the final and correct information. And then the other factor as well is that the team in their discussions with investors during this expression of interest period are taking feedback on some of these things. And so the decision around the raise amount, those kinds of the valuation, they won't be finalized until the offer does go live next week as well. So really appreciate the questions. Great to see so much thinking around the investment opportunity here. I think you guys have talked through the use of funds and what you're going to use the money for. So let me go down to this one. You kind of touched on this, but like, what's the split between the current sales on the two different parts of the brand, the Reckless and the BX brand? And there was another question in there as well around kind of the margins across the different types of products. So Alice, I'm sure you would love to give us a very, very long answer on that one, but I'm sure you also have a very short answer on kind of the margins across the different types of products as well. But maybe those two questions, one sort of just touching again on the brand split, and then two, the kind of margins across the wholesale versus retail, and I guess the white label as well.
Yeah, easy. I'll let Jared answer the brand split because literally he's obsessed with our twin brand strategy, and then I'll jump into the margins.
Yes, I've take it with a grain of salt. It's probably up by a few percent, but basically BX Lager as a single standalone product is now about 50% of our overall sales, and the 4BX in a range is somewhere between 60 and 65%. So that started when we opened the venue at 0 and brewing our first beer for the race week soon after we opened, to now being a clear majority, but also where most of the growth is at the moment as well. So it is still growing, so I expect that share to increase.
Yeah, look, I don't have the split by margins by product on me, but look, it with everything when it comes with beer, it depends how you split it. So gross margins when you're looking at our products, they're about the 60% if you're just looking at the COGS, but then obviously you got to add in your employee expenses. That's actually the biggest cost of our business is our employees. When you think about how we structure our business, we've got the venue, we've got a kitchen, and we've got sales staff. So look, the gross margin is really healthy. Right now, when you think about our growth projection and our working capital needs, you'll see this in the offer document. But our kind of like net income is a negative right now if you look at it on that kind of like P&L basis. It doesn't capture two things which you'll see in the offer document. One is kind of the value of the stock that we have on hand. It's a huge asset for us. Kind of our lag time from purchasing our inputs to receiving our income from our customers. If you think about the timeline there, you brew a beer, it's 6 weeks, you got to package it, sell it, then you got to collect your funds. So you're kind of looking at that 12-week mark for us for our working capital needs. So that's the key reason for our margins at that net basis. But our gross margins are really healthy, which you'll see in the EOI doc. I hope that answered the question for now.
And I think when you split it by product as well, one of the key focuses and what's really successful is we have good margin on our very craft and our Reckless brewing. A key part of our strategy is if we're going to produce a macro style beer, we have to compete on a price point in the market. So that's where you get that growth. And so I would consider the BX lager to be the loss leader as it grows really quickly, to make sure that we're not pricing ourselves out of that market and not being able to actually take advantage of it.
Awesome. And just to remind everyone as well, the financials as well as management commentary on the financials will be available in full in the offer document next week as well. There's a couple of questions on here around your awesome venue. So how long a lease do you have on the venue at the moment, and what's the capacity that you have in there at the moment, and how's that impacted by your growth goals?
Okay, we've got a 555, a 15-year lease on the venue. We're on year 4 of that, so we've still got 11 years. Obviously, any sort of thing like this, we would love to have goals where we could potentially purchase the building itself to secure even longer term plans beyond that. That's not a discussion for today. That's more of a hope for some point in the future. The venue itself, we say it's a 400-seat venue because at the moment we have 400 seats. We're quite lucky in the way our licensing works is we don't actually have a lot of restrictions. In fact, we've got a lot of caveats, and one of them is we can actually close our 88 parking space parking lot, enclosed parking lot, and turn it into a festival, which also doesn't have limits. So we call it a 400-seat venue. It is not limited by seats or by size or by the indoor area. And so because of that, there's still a huge amount of capacity for growth. Not so much this weekend, which is one of our busiest weekends of the year with one of the big car races coming to town. We're often at capacity, but it's outside of all of that where we're still building strong local connections. We're still not just a place to buy beer. We are a restaurant. We are a full licensed bar. So one of the things that we really pride ourselves on is everything is local. The spirits are local. The wines are local. Everything we try and that is available local for the kitchen, we source local. And so because of that, we're still gaining that reception from the locals. And it's not good enough just being a bar. You need to have entertainment. You need to have reasons for people to come. And we're investing in that. And we take it little steps at a time, but we find things that aren't being done. One of our my proudest things was coming up with a monthly jazz night. On a Wednesday night, once a month, we'll get some live jazz in. We've got the Conservatorium of Music next door. We approached them and said, look, do you reckon jazz would work? Now, once a month on Wednesdays, this place is jam-packed. The vibe in here is beyond anything you can actually experience unless you're here personally for it. And it's just magical. And we work on all those sorts of things. So jazz is going, then we target the next one. And we really just start filling out those slots. And also we're only open 5 days a week. So there's opportunity to then become a 7-day-a-week venue. So there's huge amounts of retail growth that we've earmarked for here. Again, we never rush into it. We take a staged approach and we make sure once we do something, we get it to a point where it's really successful and then we move and add something else somewhere else. So for the venue, the potential is what we are capable of doing because there's so much here.
Great answer. So we've got a question on here around, awesome to hear that you guys are so thoughtful on taking on new opportunities and you're quite selective at what you do and what you don't do, which is really great to see. And the question asks, if you're thinking about adding new retail venues, how are you thinking about ensuring the same excellent level of service that you have at the current venue? And I think that's a great example with the jazz night. And I might roll into this as well. The next question on here is, what other risks are you guys thinking about as you're thinking about your growth plans?
I think that is the same question. So the biggest risk of opening a new venue is creating that vibe, creating that thing that makes Reckless so big. And Alice answered it before, and that's time. We've got to wait. We've got to see the right opportunity. It's got to be with the right business, in the right location, with the right business partner, with the right level of oversight to make sure that we get to have the Reckless narrative at this venue. We're not just going to sit there and look at our money in the bank and go, let's spend it. Let's buy that venue over there. We're not going to do that. We have to be patient because everything about what we've created here is so much more than just opening a venue. So the risk is there. And it's also one of the key risks that you'll see in the investor doc is keeping and retaining key people. That is, staffing is literally half of our cost. It is everything about what we do. And I think the only way we can address that is that of all the people that we brought on from day one, so many of them are still here today. Our turnover is extraordinarily low. And as we grow, we look for the right person to fit who we are. But just knowing so many people now that we opened 3.5 years ago and they've been here for 3.5 years, I think is testament to what we've done here. And we will not take over another venue unless we have that structure in place where we can control that and make sure that they are part of who we are.
Just to build on that, broader from the venue, I think the other question was touching upon just generally what we see as our key risks going forward. Losing key staff is absolutely one of them. And we spend a lot of time and effort trying to build that culture here and make sure that people are being challenged to grow in the right way. The other key one from my perspective is around funding and cash flow. Obviously, we're a small business and can't shy away from how important those things are. Our working capital demands, again, as a production brewery, are quite large compared to other kind of like industries and small businesses. So being really cognizant of that is really important. And a huge part of what, the three of us have been really focusing on over the last 2 years, once we got over the hurdle of opening and the shock of that, was really working on our costs. And we've done a really pretty amazing job considering the scale which we're growing to bring down the cost base and to where we can. We've even integrated some of the functions that we were paying third parties to do because we thought we could do it better, and turns out we probably can. So I'd say that's probably the two key risks from my perspective is really cash flow risk, tied up in that working capital need and tied to that kind of the funding around that. We've done a really good job of keeping it under control now and shaving costs and efficiencies where we can. But that would be, from my perspective, going forward. Again, it's just the same old risks that we're going to have to manage today going forward.
Awesome. Great answer. I'm going to try and do rapid fire through a couple of these questions on here that I think you can answer really quickly. So what's the usual lead time for white label retail orders?
Great question. About 6 weeks, but the earlier the better. So please get on the website ASAP.
Awesome. When you say that you've got 1,000 retail distribution points now, what would your dream be of how many that would be?
World domination? No. No. Look, I think right now, I'm going to jump in with this one really quick. Right now, we've really focused on the independent kind of bottlers, bars, restaurants, that kind of stuff. Certainly, we do want to get ranging with the majors, but again, they're tough to deal with, right? So we want to make sure we're well placed to be in a good kind of negotiating position and financial position to have those conversations. So again, not jumping at the opportunities until we're absolutely ready, but certainly nationwide ranging from my perspective is the goal and the dream eventually.
I'd like to go into every pub and have an XBA on tap.
That too.
Yeah. I think when we set up, we had a 10-year goal to be one of the top 50 independent breweries in Australia. We're 3.5 years in, and without having all the data, we think we're about a top 30 already. So our revised 10-year plan now is to become one of the top 10, top 5 independent breweries in Australia. And through all the growth, through what we've done, we don't see that as a far-reaching thing, but it does require a much larger business than we are now.
Yeah.
Awesome. And last rapid fire question, do you have the trademarks in place around Reckless Brewing and BX brands?
Not yet. I am currently talking with trademark lawyers.
Awesome. Well, you have the prior use anyway. So, as a former lawyer, at least Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks so much, team, for answering those questions. I think it's been a really, really great discussion. And thank you to everyone who's joined as well for your really thoughtful questions and your engagement and being with us during this webinar. So as I mentioned earlier, a recording of this video will be sent around to everyone who registered in case you missed out on part of the session earlier on. The Expression of Interest campaign for Reckless is live for 1 more week. So if you haven't already, jump onto the Birchal platform, check out the pitch video and the company profile, put in your expression of interest so that you can be one of the first people to have the opportunity to invest when the offer does go live next Tuesday. And maybe I'll just give a little plug as well. So if you do happen to be in the Bathurst area and you're free next Tuesday night, come on down to the brewery because I'm going to come across and we're going to do a locals investor Q&A in Bathurst. So hopefully we can meet in person there. I think that's all I have to cover off. Thanks again, team, for being here. Thanks, attendees, for coming. Jump on over to birchal.com, have a look at the Reckless page, submit your EOI, and the offer opens next Tuesday. Have a lovely rest of the day.
Thanks,
Bye.
guys.
See your time.